there's a palpable change in it. I have a theory about autumn. Every season has a specific magic, a certain feel to it that makes it special, but autumn is the most magical. If you ask most people why they love fall, they'll probably say Halloween or pumpkin spice season. Football, breaking out the sweaters and scarves, changing leaves, hay rides and cider. And yes, a million times yes to all of those things. And for folks who aren't magical, that's enough. It's enough to put mums and scarecrows in their yards, carve a jack-o'-lantern, and stuff copious amounts of fun-sized candy bars into the buckets of tiny little ghosts and ghouls. Bundling up on the bleachers, a PSL warming their hands, cheering on the local high school football team. Family pictures in the pumpkin patch, everyone wearing varying shades of oranges and yellows. Scary stories around a bonfire, watching It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown for the millionth time. Fall is a time when we can all be kids again, when we can jump into piles of leaves with wet suckers and nobody thinks we're crazy. But for those who recognize the magic we carry within us, for those of us who know there's more than what we see, fall is so much more. Hi, my name is Carol. I'm a former Southern Baptist, and I'm finding my way back to the practices of my ancestors, following the path that's rooted in my DNA. On this podcast, I'll share the history of the folk magic of the region and share my practice as I learn and grow in knowledge. We'll talk to people from all walks of life who follow different paths of spirituality, looking for the commonalities and the way we're more alike than different. If you're searching for a way to connect to spirit, pick up your walking stick and let's get to exploring. I've talked before about how people who use the term witchy to describe their nails or their outfits or their feelings makes me want to conjure up a few good hexes. Yes, there are things that tend to be identifiable to the practice of witchcraft, but to label things as witchy digs into my skin a little. It cheapens my craft, makes it feel trendy. And I get it. Witchcraft is very hashtagable. The photo ops are beautiful. Look at the cover art for this podcast. It's very aesthetic. But the social media popularity brings with it people who pretend to be witches, who have no desire to connect to spirit, to call on the earth for protection, to use her gifts to heal. They want followers. I can't look into the souls of each and every person and determine if they're truly witches, and really, it's none of my business. But my goal with this podcast is to grow, is to learn from others, share what I learn, and use that knowledge to make the world better. It's not very Instagrammable. But even those who don't practice can feel this shift this time of year. There's a different feel to the air. And no, it's not just cooler temperatures and no mosquitoes. It's magic. The autumn equinox ushered in a time of balance, when the dark and light are equal. Then the nights grow longer, making the daylight a valuable commodity. It's harvest time, the time to bring into storehouses the crops that will sustain us through the dark winter. It brings us closer to home, content to settle in with blanket and book, a cup of tea warming our hands. The spirits encourage us to rest, to build our strength before the cold settles in. The veil is thin, and our ancestors can cross easier, spending time with us as we gather around fires. The earth gifts us with earthy tones and scents, the crunch of leaves and oranges and reds. For the beginner witch, fall is the perfect time to put your witchy toes in the water, to find your footing. So how can you tap into the magic of autumn? There are so many ways to absorb the magic of the season. But let's start with the harvest. But Carol, you may say, I live in a city, not a field in sight. My pumpkins come from Trader Joe's. And this is the truth for many of us on a witchcraft path. The green is harder and harder to find, replaced with urban sprawl, planned neighborhoods, and manicured lawns. But it's possible to connect with nature, even if your only outside access is covered in blacktop. The autumn harvest is a celebration of the earth's bounty, that's for sure. But it's also a time to celebrate the harvest in your personal life, in your very soul. Let's talk about some ways to recognize your own personal harvest that has nothing to do with corn, pumpkins, or apples. Journaling is one of the things I can't emphasize enough. This podcast is essentially my journal. It's how I organize my thoughts, allow spirit and ancestors to speak to me and through me, and to jot down anything else that pops into my brain. And you can use journaling to bring your mental, emotional, and spiritual harvest into your storehouse. Before you open your journal, take some time to ground yourself and cleanse your space. More on those in a bit. Find a cozy spot, light a candle, and ask your guides to bring to your mind things you have learned so far on your journey. How have those things helped you grow in your practice? What challenges have you faced along the way? How has your practice impacted your life? How have you grown? When I first started my journey, I wanted to be the perfect witch. I'm a Scorpio, so of course I had to be perfect. I started with Wicca, but it didn't feel right. I had just left the church, and Wicca felt a little too much like organized religion for me. I decided since I love to garden, I must be a green witch. Then I discovered through meditation that I can easily move between this world and the other world, so I must be a hedge witch, right? It took a while for the ancestors to finally make me understand that I don't have to fit into a label. Appalachian folk magic is a melting pot of cultures, so my practice can be too. If you've connected with deities or guides, what have you learned from them? How have they influenced the way you practice? All of these things make up your personal harvest. Write them down and revisit them throughout the season, adding to it as things happen. While we're on the subject of journaling, let's talk about shadow work. No doubt you've heard of it, even if you don't know what it is. Shadow work was popularized by psychologist Carl Jung, who believed that the shadow is an archetype of the darker parts of your psyche, and that this should be explored instead of only focusing on the parts we find more palatable about ourselves. Our shadow selves are hidden, repressed, and these shadows need to be explored to discover a more complete picture of who we are. Shadow work is a way to be honest with yourself. It can help heal past traumas, improve relationships with others and with ourselves. There are a lot of resources on the web where you can find journal prompts to help you on your journey. A Jungian trained therapist is a great resource too. Carl Jung was also a proponent of play as a source of healing, and he encouraged people of all ages to spend some time being silly and doing things you enjoy. Think about how free you feel when you're playing with your dog or you take a turn on a swing set. A little folly can make life so much more meaningful. Another aspect of bringing autumn into your magic is to utilize the symbols of the season. Apples, pumpkins, acorns, falling leaves, cinnamon can all be used in spells. A simple way to bring fall into your home is to make a simmer pot. Mine is filled with apple slices, cinnamon, clove, and a little vanilla. It's better than any candle you'll ever find at Bath & Body Works. But speaking of candles, autumn is the perfect time for a little candle magic. I use taper candles and tea candles on my altar, but those Bath & Body Works candles can work too. Light a candle in the evening and spend some time staring into the flame, thanking the earth for the season. Fire is powerful magic. It can be both the giver and the taker of life, so it demands respect. But it can also be an element of protection and of connection to spirit. Take a walk outside to look at the leaves. I know this sounds simplistic, but the most powerful magic can happen when you surround yourself with the mundane. The chemical processes that occur when green leaves turn jewel-toned is magical. It helps us realize how life is always cyclical, how autumn turns to winter, then is reborn into spring. Autumn is the time when we get to witness the waning of the year, the crone season, and how she will be reborn into the maiden of spring. It helps us realize at the same time our small footprint in the world and our contribution to the universe, how our strings are interwoven into the fabric of time and space. It helps us realize how short our time is in this present reality and can encourage us to search for our purpose. It also brings us comfort to understand that, just like the seasons, our lives are cyclical and they continue on. Autumn is the time when the veil between this world and the next is thinnest, so spirit work can come easier, especially if you're a beginner. I know in my own life that my guides and ancestors are pretty chatty right now, and connecting with them is almost effortless. Divination with tarot, oracle, or dream work can be especially potent during autumn. I mentioned my altar earlier, but I want to elaborate on it a bit. I'll post a picture to my social media so you can see it. My altar transitions depending on what I'm feeling. It's small, but it contains things that are important to me. I don't follow any kind of rules when it comes to setting it up. Remember, witchcraft is personal, so your altar is too. You don't even have to make an altar, but I love having a dedicated space to meditate. When I go for walks, I'll usually pick up acorns, leaves, or feathers that I find lying on the ground. When I get home, these trinkets wind up on my altar. I use my altar for my candle magic and spell work, but I mainly use it as a depository of the treasures I find. When I feel it's no longer meeting my needs, I'll clear it off and start over. It's almost like an analogy for my life. My altar is a place for honoring my ancestors, so I have photos of my parents. I have a poem dedicated to the Celtic goddess Brigid. I have stones my kids have brought to me, a spell jar my oldest son made for me, dried flowers from my garden. Your altar should contain what you find important. Don't try to copy somebody else's. Make it yours. Autumn is a time to slow down, to reflect on the year and think of the lessons you've learned. It's a time to show appreciation for the harvest you've collected. It's a time to look squarely into the waning light of the year and embrace the beauty and magic of its passing. It's a time to bake things, cozy up your nest, and settle into the knowledge that the earth will regenerate, will continue after a brief rest, and as she makes her exit into winter, she will leave behind the assurance that you are never alone. In today's Witch Dictionary, I want to talk about grounding and cleansing. Before you light a candle, utter a spell, or set an intention, you need to prepare both your space and yourself. I think you can probably figure out that I'm a very simple practitioner, so these rituals are just that, simple. There are so many ways to perform a cleansing, but this is what works for me. I love incense. I'm a visual person, so the incense smoke helps me to focus on the cleansing. I begin by lighting the incense, and I use it to cleanse my altar as well as the space I'll be in. For instance, if I'm entering into a meditation, I'll wave the incense around the tools on my altar, and I'll walk in a circle around my space. While I do this, I call upon ancestors, spirits, deities, and guides to protect and cleanse this space. Let this smoke restore balance. I repeat this until either the incense is burned out or I feel the space is cleansed. I also use this ritual to cleanse my whole home. I'll open the windows and walk around each room reciting the same phrase. I like to leave the windows open for a while just to make sure the negative energy has time to leave. When things feel off, I'll do the same thing around the outside of my home. It's simple, but effective. All rituals, whether it be spell work, cleansing, or meditation, are based on your intention. Intention is the most powerful magic in the universe. So when you are cleansing your space, go into it with the knowledge that your space will be cleansed. No amount of witchcraft tools will help you if your head and your heart aren't in it. Some of the most powerful magic I've seen utilized had no tools, but had very powerful intention. This is another reason I believe altars are important. It gives me a space to focus my intention. So next, I focus on grounding. Grounding gets me prepared for spell work or meditation. It keeps me firmly planted in my space and keeps my mind settled. I sit in front of my altar, close my eyes, and plant my feet firmly on the floor. I take several deep breaths and I imagine a root growing from the ground through the floor and wrapping around me. I settle into the hug and then I thank Spirit for connecting with me. If I'm out for a walk and I can't get my mind to settle, I find a place to sit and I concentrate on the nature around me, the sounds and the smells, the breeze that hits my face. I spend a few minutes breathing deeply and allowing Spirit to calm me. I do this several times a day just to keep my ADHD brain from exploding. It's a great way to deal with anxiety as well. Now, as much as I believe there is no wrong way to witch, I firmly believe that cleansing and grounding are essential to a safe and healthy practice. Just like you can't expect to do well on a test you didn't study for, your spell work or meditation won't be as fruitful as they could be if you don't spend some time in preparation. Cleansing and grounding also help protect you from negative forces that may be around you, so please don't skip them. I hope you're enjoying this most magical time of year. Remember, when you're drinking your cider or carving your jack-o'-lanterns, to take a minute to just feel the magic. Thank you so much for joining me on Solitary Magic. I hope I've given you a little more insight on what witchcraft is, and I've inspired you to come along on this journey with me. I'll link my socials in the description, so connect with me. If you have questions or you'd like to hear me talk about something on the podcast, let me know. I would love to hear from you. So, until next time, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your fields. Until we meet again, may the goddess hold you in the hollow of her hands.